Hey everyone, welcome to the 4021 LTS release webinar. I'm really glad you're here. My name is William Taylor, and joining me today is Komoncharoensiri. And if you joined us today, it's probably because you're thinking about your next move with 4D, whether it's AI, web performance, compliance, or simply staying competitive. So instead of walking through a long list of changes, we'll show you it later. It's really impressive, all the changes that were added into the 20R feature release, tying up into the 21 LTS feature release, 21 LTS release. We did something a little bit different. We asked the product owners, the teams that have their pulse on network tendencies and things like that. They worked in between uh, marketing and engineering, customer, working with developers like you to really get the best features inside 4D. And we asked them, hey, what were the features or the wide range or the general overarching themes that showed up in 21 throughout the 20R release that you're really proud of, that you think are really great? And that's what we did. So we asked them to take those features and make some demos and make some really interesting pieces of work for you to use for us to all understand, to see how we're going. So this webinar is hopefully going to provide us a little bit more of a higher level view of what the features are and how they all came together through the 21R release. So Ad and I are working together. We're just the tip of the spear. This is all of this team members that you're seeing here is the greater product team that are there to bring you the platform that you know and love, and we'll hear from most of them today. So and here's what we have planned for today. We're going to be diving into AI integration, quick connectivity, web extensions with 4D Qodly Pro, stronger data integrity with ORDA events, smarter component reuse techniques and changes in 4D, integrated electronic invoicing. If you know, you know. That's something that if you have to know that, you have to know that. Otherwise, and encoding improvements that impact your daily work. Yeah, let's get started with AI. Now, we all know that 4D users have diverse needs, but their pain points are often the same. They're tired of losing time on repetitive tasks like manual data entry, sorting, or trying to make sense of unstructured info. They aren't just looking for software, they're dreaming of a tool that empowers them to decide and act fast. And as developers and software publishers, your challenge and your responsibility is to deliver on this demand for modernization. You know AI is everywhere, but the real trick is figuring out how to integrate it smoothly and effectively into your current applications and architectures. Now, at 4D, we truly believe the value of AI goes far beyond a simple chatbot. The real power lies in its ability to understand structure, process data, and process data at the very heart of your business logic. And with 4021 and with 40 AIKIT, we're making this technology immediately actionable. You now have the native tool to inject real, concrete intelligence deep into your application's DNA. Now, the benefits are very clear. For you developers, you're no longer just building databases, you're transforming your applications into intelligent systems capable of both analysis and autonomous action. And for your users, it's an unprecedented leap in user experience and productivity. They get an application that actually anticipates their needs and simplifies their daily grind. Now let's have a look at a demo that Matthew has prepared for everyone on this.
Over the past few months, you've heard a lot about artificial intelligence, especially with 4021. You've seen many demos and many webinars about semantic search, RAG, conversational UIs, vectors, and embedding. But today, I want to show you a very practical example where AI truly changes the game, where it clearly improves your user's experience boosts their productivity and makes their daily work more comfortable. So let's take the example of a travel agency using our application. Like many travel agencies, they receive a large number of emails every day, and all kinds of emails. So imagine a shared mailbox where the agency receives messages about IT technical issues, suspected fraudulent transactions, refund requests, unpaid invoice, and more. These emails, they need to be handled quickly, and it is not realistic to have someone watching this mailbox all day long. So we are going to use AI to automatically create tasks. I open the task form next to the mailbox. The idea is simple. We use AI to analyze the content of each email and automatically create a task for the right person in the company. So if we open the Data Explorer, we can see the departments: sales, after sales, marketing, IT, HR, and so on. We also have employees, and of course, each department has a manager. So the idea is straightforward. We analyze the email, we summarize it, and we create the right task for the right person. Let's try it by clicking this small button here. And we can see that a task has been created for the IT department and assigned to the department manager because the email is clearly related to IT. Okay, now when I open the task screen, we can see here that I get a new task. The email has been summarized, and the action is to renew the SSL certificate for the travel agency before it expires with a due date and so on. Perfect. So let's go back to the email and try another one. Here it's a critical booking system down. So let's see what the AI suggests here. Once again, it will create a task for IT. And here it is. Investigate and resolve the issue. Now let's process a different type of email, for example, an unpaid invoice. This time the task is assigned to the finance department. And we can continue. Here we have an unhappy customer. This will probably go to after sales. All right, perfect. Here we have a question for HR. And the AI did it right. Of course, we can see all these tasks listed here. So as you can see, this is a very simple and very practical example of how AI can improve your users' daily work. These features are easy to implement and easy to deploy with 4D21 and for the AIKIT. But here's the best part. The application you're looking at right now, the one I just demonstrated, well, I didn't build it myself. I didn't code anything. It was entirely built with AI using VS Code and GitHub Copilot thanks to the 4D extension that we provide for VS Code. So very soon I will invite you to a dedicated webinar when you will see me build this application from scratch. The data model, the data initialization, the algorithm, the forms, the design, everything. So 4D21 brings AI to your applications, but it also brings AI to help you build your applications thanks to VS Code and the 4D extension. So thank you very much.
And for the second part of the AI demos, I'd like us to take a step back and put ourselves in the shoes of our end users. Most of the time, they know what they're looking for in their application. but they don't always know which box to tick in a search screen, an advanced search screen with 20 different fields, some checkboxes, drop downs, etc. And they can even get frustrated if they find nothing, just because the nuance in the data, there's just something that they don't understand. So that's the daily challenge of a database developer. And as 40 developers, we love structured data, precise, typed, well-defined data is our bread and butter. Unstructured data feels hard to grasp and can even be harder to fit inside a user interface. And that's exactly where 40 vectors in 40 change the game. The goal here is not to build yet another chatbot or complex RAG, retrieval augmented generation system. The goal is to inject intelligence directly into your existing interfaces. Your critical business filters, the ones that require rigor, are still there. But with vectors, you can dramatically increase the search and interpretation capabilities of your application. For you developers, it's as simple as an ORDA query. And for your users, the application finally understands their real intent beyond the keywords. It feels smooth, almost natural. And to demonstrate this, we're going to show you an interesting demo on the 40 vectors.
All right. The goal of this demonstration is to show you the power of 40 vectors and to show you what they can bring to you and to your application and to your end users. Here we are in front of a real estate application for real estate investors, big investors. Most people usually have an investment strategy, and the idea will be to describe here this strategy and find corresponding real estate assets in the database. Let's have a look at the settings. I could change the language if I want, but we'll stay in English for today. And we'll use LM Studio for both embeddings and reasoning model. At home, if you want, you will be able to use an OpenAI API key, but today we'll do everything locally. All right, that's why I will put this aside and open LM Studio. I'll bring here the log and empty this so we can see how things are going. So the first thing I will do will be to load the demo data. The demo will come with some data, and at the same time the embeddings are generated. So you saw here the logs for those embeddings. So we can now just ask for something, so for a search. So I will search a carbon neutral office space for tech tenants, okay, with sustainable building features and high-speed connectivity. And we will search this in database, and we won't use those filters for the moment. All right, here are my results. So it's quite fast. If I do it again, you will see here in LM Studio that there's an embedding going on. It's very fast. And I will select the first line, Riverside Commons here in North America. And the idea here is that I will complete this semantic search, because this is a semantic search here with the match. I will complete it with a comparison, an assessment between the investment strategy, the mandate, and the actual description of the asset. And here in the semantic highlights, what I get in English, of course, is what matches the mandate and what doesn't match the mandate. And this is a very interesting feature, so that I'm in front of my client, of my investor, and I can really have a smart discussion, smart talk about this precise asset, what it brings compared to the mandate, or what it doesn't bring, in fact. So here, for example, there's no explicit mention of carbon neutral certification or verified carbon offsetting measures. So that's an interesting point. Even if, regarding the pure semantic search, it was the highest ranking asset. So that's great. We can select another asset, the second one, Nebula Cloud Campus. And here, once again, Overall, the property strongly aligns with sustainability and energy efficiency, but does not meet the core requirement of being office space. Of course, it's an industrial asset type here. So that's great. I have this kind of deep assessment of whether or not this property corresponds to my strategy here. So that's very interesting. The good thing here is that the ORDA query to get those results is fairly simple. It's just a simple ORDA query with vector here, with a vector and a threshold. The threshold here is on purpose very low. I want a lot of data. I don't have a lot of data here in my database. So now, if I try this here, pre-configured search, value add opportunities in urban center, I will select a region here in North America, and I want at least 6% yield. Let's search that. You see I have less result now, 13 only. And what's brilliant with ORDA is that the query, it's really simple. It's the vector and a region and a minimum yield here. And if I complete here with multifamily, for example, once again, it's a very conventional ORDA query. And now for this only result, I can select it. And you see here LM Studio working, generating me this assessment, and overall it aligns with the mandate. But the advice would be to find a higher match. So I will conclude. This is the kind of feature you can now offer to your end users. I will reduce this, and combining vector search, so semantic search, with reasoning models to further improve the results or the advices you can get from the system is really, really powerful, and it's a real added value for your end users. And it is so simple to implement now with for D21 and for the AIKIT. So now it's your turn. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, for the two great demos. Both are really cool. The second one was really interesting. I was looking at buying a house at some point, and if Wish Zillow would have had that sort of feature, that would help me possibly figure out which house will work best for me. So really cool. Can AI help generate 4D code? So yes, it can. AI in Project 4D in project mode in Visual Studios with Copilot, you can generate 4D code. If you look on the blog, there is a blog about it, and there are also a few demos, not only what we saw today, on YouTube. If you look at 4D Software's YouTube and search AI, you'll see how you can use 4D to write AI to write 4D code. And as Mathieu said, the first demo was written purely with AI prompts, which is amazing. And there will be a webinar next month. I'll talk about it later on in the presentation. There will be of what the date and things like that. So more to come. So the answer is yeah, and we're happy, and we feel like it's a great way to write 4D code. So good question. Okay. Let's keep it going. If anything does come to mind, I'll stop after every section and we can just review what's going on. Today, end users expect flawless connectivity, whether they are moving around the office, switching from Wi-Fi to mobile to airplane Wi-Fi, or simply waking their laptops up from sleep mode. They hate it when their applications freeze or drop connections. And as a software developer or publisher, You need to address this. You need to. We're being asked to provide a seamless experience without having to rebuild your entire architecture. So this is exactly why 4021 introduces the QUIC network protocol for your client server applications. Now, in the following demo, we will show you how this modern UDP-based protocol handles everything like degraded network connections and network switching. And the greatest benefit for you, the developer, is upgrading to this production-ready technology is completely effortless. It only takes a single click in your project settings. And for your end users, it guarantees a highly resilient, responsive, and always available application that simply works, no matter where they go. So here we go.
In this demo, I'm going to show you how the QUIC protocol makes your client-server applications much more resilient. We have here three identical 4D server applications using the same dataset. The only difference between them is the network layer they use. As a reminder, choosing the network layer is done simply through the application settings. On the end user side, we have three 4D client applications connected to the 4D servers, each using a different network protocol: Legacy, Servernet, and QUIC. All actions on the applications are synchronized in order to minimize the impact on the displayed result. The average duration of this request is displayed at the bottom. Each application regularly retrieves 5 random person entities. I'm starting the data retrieval over my local network under optimal conditions. Under these conditions, we don't see any significant difference, and human perception of performance is not affected by the protocol during normal application usage. Now, I'm going to degrade my local network performance. I will introduce 5% packet loss and a 5 millisecond latency. I restart the data retrieval. After just a few seconds, we can already see that the QUIC network layer retrieves the information from the 4D server more quickly. Let's degrade the local network performance even further. I now introduce 10% packet loss and 10 milliseconds latency. Again, we quickly observe that response times are better with the QUIC network layer. Last test with a very degraded network connection, 20% packet loss and 20 millisecond latency. The data retrieval time is still significantly better with QUIC. We can also see that the QUIC application refreshes its data far more frequently. The user therefore experiences much better usability. That concludes the part about how network performance affects the perceived responsiveness of your applications. We will now look at another case where QUIC network layer provides increased resilience: mobility situations. My computer is equipped with two network interfaces, one wired and one Wi-Fi. I increase the frequency of data retrieval so that network interface changes are easier to detect. I start the data retrieval on the client applications. Everything is very fast for all of them. Now, I'm going to disable my wired network interface to simulate unplugging the cable. We can see that the QUIC application continues retrieving information. The link between the 4D client and the 4D server is maintained, even though the system switched network interfaces. It is slower, of course, because the Wi-Fi interface performs less well. But it does not freeze like the other two applications. Those applications lost their TCP connection and can no longer react. Here, I shortened the video slightly to show you that after about a minute, network error messages appear, while the application using QUIC continues to run. I now reactivate my wide network interface. The QUIC application keeps working and becomes faster again. You can clearly see it. Oh, it looks like it became a bit slower again. What's happening? Oh, that's normal. The wide network connection just dropped again. I don't know why, but what I do know is that my application remains available and usable through all these interface changes, and therefore all these IP address changes. That's the magic of QUIC.
So Mike's question is regarding QUIC. In terms of the use case, not take out the performance and stuff like that. QUIC, the best thing to describe QUIC is a way to minimize or even eliminate the possibility of you having disconnection, right? Because it has a self-recovery mechanism that allows your application to continue to communicate with the server with even changing the network interface. As you've seen in the demo, interface change from a wireless to LAN or LAN to wireless. Your application continue to work and be able to reestablish itself to communicate with for the server. So that's one nice thing about QUIC. Now, LAN and WAN, it will behave the same way regardless.
Yeah, and then another point about that, that's a really good point, Ad. Another thing about speed between LAN and WAN, um, I guess maybe we're talking about application performance at that point, usability of forms, things like that. Um, what we've seen is it's not generally a question of latency between QUIC or between HTTP or UDP or TCP or UDP. It's a question of how the application was designed to function, and the chattiness of the application. If there's a lot of back and forth from the server, if you go on the WAN, then you're going to have a lot of back and forth, and then all the increase in latency when you're on WAN creates that bottleneck and creates that performance hit. So if you do have, and we have done this with a lot of people through professional services team, creating applications that were developed for LAN that were overly chatty to more or less reduce the chattiness and to increase performance, either on specific forms or in the entire application. So yeah, so I don't think it's a question of turning on QUIC will not make an application work better from the moon. That's not what we're saying. The application needs to work well already. Tony asked, does 40 server publish both QUIC and ServerNet at the same time? It's either or.
It's
Tony.
either or. There's an option that you define from the database setting. So you choose one.
Yeah, there's 3 drop downs: QUIC, ServerNet, Legacy on 21. So you choose and you go with that one. So thank you. And then a small warning. Christoph said for T-Mobile 5G home internet, it does not allow UDP, so connecting to a 40 server with QUIC is not possible. Yes, you need to have UDP enabled on your network. Way around, use a VPN connection to the 40 server network. So that in his case, he said he had to use Sonic Wall Mobile Connect. So that's his way to get around it. So every day, we all use dozens of mobile and web apps. And it's only natural that we've come to expect the same fluid and polished experience in the tools every day that we use in our 40 applications. For you as 40 developers, the challenge has always been, how do I bring that high-end UI UX into my trusted, rock-solid desktop applications without the risk of starting from scratch? Now, this is exactly what 40 Qodly Pro in 4021 now offers. It's not about choosing between desktop or web. It's about changing and augmenting your solution. In this demo, we're going to focus on a hybrid experience. We'll see how 40 desktop applications can now seamlessly embed modern web modules and rich UI components into existing forms. For you as a developer or software editor, the benefit is evolution without risk. You don't have to rewrite your core logic to deliver a major visual and functional upgrade. And for your end user, this results in a significantly richer experience, an application that remains fast and as reliable as ever, but now looks and feels more modern or even a more premium tool. So now on to a demo that was prepared by Murad.
Here, we're looking at a simple contact management interface. On the left, we have a list of contacts. When I select any contact, the right side displays a form with their information, allowing me to edit fields like name, email, or phone number. From an end user perspective, this is just a 40 desktop application. It is fast, responsive, and behaves like a traditional 40 form. There's no visible difference, and that's intentional. Now, here's what's happening underneath. The form on the right is actually a Qodly page rendered inside a web area. So what we're looking at is a hybrid application. The data and business logic remain in 40, but the UI layer is powered by 40 Qodly Pro. You developers don't have to rewrite your application. You keep your existing structure, your tables, your methods, your architecture. You're simply enhancing the interface layer. Let me quickly show you how the communication works. When I select a contact in the list, you can see that we're calling a WA execute JavaScript function. We pass the selected contact identifier to the Qodly page so it knows which entity to display. Now, let's look at the forms onload event. Here, we're calling that WA set contacts and passing it a utility class that I have created. This utility class exposes two methods, save contact and delete contact. So instead of the web page directly handling persistence, it calls clearly defined 40 methods. You developers stay in control. The web layer does not bypass your architecture. It collaborates with it. Now, let's switch to Qodly Studio. Here, we see the UI definition for the contact form. Their layout, components, and bindings are all designed visually. Fields are directly connected to the contact Qodly source. I'll select the Save button. On the clicked event configuration, you can see that it calls the Save Contact method from the contacts. Same thing for the Delete button. On click, it calls the Delete Contact. So the flow is very clear. The Qodly page handles the UI, user interactions trigger context methods, 40 executes the logic. Now let's go back to the running application. When I select a contact, 40 sends the context. The Qodly page updates instantly, and if I edit the data and click Save, the call goes back to 40 through the context class, and you will see that we have a synchronized state. The list shows the name when I edit it. You developers can modernize one form at a time. You evolve your application progressively while keeping the stability and performance your clients rely on. To conclude, 40 Qodly Pro allows you to combine the robustness of 40 with the flexibility of modern web app technologies. You keep control of your architecture, your users get a modern, seamless experience. And for their perspective, it's just a fast, reliable 40 application. That's the real power of the hybrid approach.
So is extending your 40 application to the web or enhancing your existing 40 forms with web areas using 40 Qodly Pro without rewriting your core logic a priority for you in the next 3 to 6 months? And this may actually tie into that question, so hold your answers maybe. Eric asked, does it still consume 2 licenses? The answer is no. Not since last webinar, I think we said that it didn't. So It's a very good question, though. No, it's the same license. It's all being managed through the internal session object. So, no. This is only for client-server applications as well. Remind you, this is not for standalone applications. Someone asked, does Qodly automatically convert my desktop PC code into 4D web code? No, it does not do that. Does not do that. 4D, what Qodly is a way. The Qodly Studio is let's say, similar to the 4D Studio. It's let's call it a WYSIWYG editor, low code environment for web development that you can now, those pages that you have in Qodly, you can now have those pages or form elements inside your 4D application. That's what we're saying now.
It's an extension to what native 4D form editor cannot do, I think. When you look at it, is some of the web feature that is delivered through Qodly. It's definitely really nice, the UI and the layout form. And we try to integrate that and kind of combine some of those concepts so that they can be used directly from your 4D application.
Yeah, and someone asked, did I understand that Qodly works only CS only, client server only? They typically develop in standalone and deploy in client server. So 4D works in development mode. You'll see on all the blogs with 4D, especially the 4D, it'll say this works in client server and development mode. So I think that's what you'll see there. That being said, it just doesn't work in, let's say, in a standalone version of an application. For a variety of technical reasons. Next, today 4D applications are everywhere. On desktops, tablets, mobiles, with constant web access. Despite this diversity in user experience and data access, the experience you provide your users must remain consistent and flawless. Security and reliability are two pillars you're responsible for. Your challenge? To design business logic capable of driving all these technologies simultaneously. 4021 meets this challenge simply and elegantly with ORDA events. ORDA events are integrated directly into your classes alongside your business logic. There is no longer any need to scatter your code wherever it needs to be executed. Everything is centralized. These events also ensure that your users only access the data that concerns them. Events accompany your data through its whole life cycle, from its initial instantiation to its final storage. The benefit is massive. A simple implementation triggered automatically by 4D, regardless of who or what is accessing the data. For you, this means an end to duplicated code and laborious maintenance. You deploy robust security and total data integrity. Let's quickly jump into the demo that was prepared by Marie-Sophie.
The demo I am going to show you was built with 4D Qodly Pro, but of course, ORDA events can also be implemented in a classic client-server application or a single-user application. This demo is a product creation application where users must authenticate. So let me show you. I run a preview. And the user logs into the application. In the header at the top, we have several pieces of information about the currently connected user. We display the administrator's email address because when we create a product, if there is a technical issue during product creation, we automatically send an email to that administrator. This sales representative, Anne, has profitability targets and cannot enter products whose margin is below 10%. The margin is the difference between the cost price and the selling price. And finally, when a product is created, a user manual is generated and stored on the disk. For this user, Anne, it will be stored in the directory /docs for Anne. So the information displayed in the header is stored in the session. Before we begin, note that Anne only sees the products she has created herself. This is achieved thanks to a first event, the restrict event, which filters data each time an entity selection is built. Here, we filter the data based on the connected user stored in the session. Thanks to this event, each user only receives the products they have created themselves. On the product page source in Qodly Studio, this list uses the Qodly source products, and its initial value is set to all, meaning all the products. So you see on the front end, we don't need to worry about the connected user. The filter is automatically triggered on the server when the products table is queried. So I create a product. You can see that the product already appears with initial values. This is also done thanks to an event. It is the constructor event here. I can give the product the name P1, and as you can see, the name of the guidelines file, which will be stored on disk, is automatically updated as soon as the product name changes. This is handled by another event, the touched event, which relies on the /docs for Anne directory name stored in the session and on the product name. I can enter some guidelines. And as you can see, I am entering a product that only achieves a 1% margin, which is insufficient compared to the required 10%. So I save, and I can display a message to the user indicating that the margin is too low. This is handled by another event, the validate event. It checks the product margin against the required margin stored in the session. This is optimized because at this stage we have not yet entered the save operation itself. It is a data validity check performed before the save is executed. So I modify the selling price to reach a 20% margin. Since this is a demo, I use this checkbox to simulate a technical issue when storing the generated guidelines file on disk. I save, and I get a message informing the user that there was not enough disk space to store the file. This is also handled by an event. This is handled by the saving event. It allows you, in case of a problem during the save operation itself, to return an error. The saving event, combined with the after-save event, allows you to guarantee data integrity. In case of error, you can see that my guidelines file name and the product status are updated to reflect the issue. I reset the file name, and the product status is set to missing guidelines file. An email also was sent to the administrator to notify them of the technical issue. In the administrator's mailbox, there is a message. As you saw, the events are implemented in ORDA classes, the entity class or the data class. I only showed you the saved part, but the exact same logic and the same events also apply to the drop operation. This event-based logic was not previously possible with 4020, at least not in such a flexible and automatic way. Compared to triggers, it brings many advantages. There is no massive table locking. You can have multiple saving or dropping events running in parallel, provided they involve different records. The logic is much more modular with finer granularity. You saw that we have validate events which run before entering the persistence action itself to perform data consistency checks before persistence. And we have events that are directly integrated into the persistence layer and designed to guarantee data integrity. The events are implemented together with the rest of the business logic inside ORDA classes. They can be useful, for example, when persisting data in third-party systems. Events also allow contextual data filtering. For example, here the user only sees their own products. This filtering occurs at the 4D engine level, regardless of how the data is accessed. The combination of a restrict event with roles and privileges provides maximum security. With 4D21, you now have a true event-driven logic. By definition, it is implemented once in a single place and automatically triggered by the 4D engine when appropriate. So you no longer need to implement this logic everywhere it is required. Data consistency is therefore guaranteed with 4D21.
Question is, how frequently are you confronted with problems or risks caused by business rules being scattered across your code? As you can see, a lot of these are really pointed questions, what we should be working on. We're really keen on getting your feedback to feed that back through the webinar. So I appreciate, we want your feedback to count more as the webinar viewers and attendees. So thank you for joining. Dougie asked, is this demo available for download? I'll do one better. I'll say all the demos will be available for download. They're on our GitHub. That's where we're posting all of our demos and things like that. I think it'll probably come at the thank you email. But yeah, so they'll all be posted to GitHub. So good question there. Answer 5. And then Chris asked, ORDA events question. When you make a function event local so that it executes on the workstation, does it subsequently fire also when the entity is saved on the server?
The answer is no. The local keyword is very very nice feature. I covered this in the last webinar. It basically on the workstation event specifically, so there is no subsequent event of the same event that will happen on the server. And you can use it for multiple, many things. This keyword actually it helps a lot in terms of doing formatting and validating the data real time rather than having to go back to the server.
Today, your users expect applications that evolve quickly, right? And what better way to achieve this is with a modular application architecture. In 4021, we worked hard across all, maybe you remember all the feature releases, to help you achieve this through with the simplification of development with components. Now, dependency management is now seamless. You no longer need to leave your project to add a new component, update it, or even debug it. And for the developer, this means increased productivity and unparalleled coding comfort without any disruption to your workflow. And for your users, it means you're able to go faster, which is great. So quick demo and we'll see it in action.
I'm working on a project and would like to display weather information on my dashboard. I have already developed a component that manages the weather and I would like to use it for this project. So I need to add it. To do this, I open the Project Dependencies interface. I click on the plus button, which opens the component addition window. I have the choice of adding local components or components from GitHub. Since my component is available locally, I simply select it in my environment and add it to the host project. All that's left to do is restart the project. And there we go. We can now see that the weather component is part of the project. Let's check in the Explorer to make sure it's there. We can find it there, perfectly integrated. And this is where the second important new feature comes in. Since the component is installed with its sources, I can directly access its code and modify if it's necessary, which greatly facilitates debugging. For example, if I run my dashboard form, we see that there is a bug. By tracing the execution and looking more closely, we see that the response attribute does not exist. Before 4D21, I would have had to open the component separately in 4D to fix the problem. Now that's no longer necessary. I can intervene directly from the host project. Let's take a look at the component's code. Indeed, the attribute does not have the correct name. There is an error, an extra S. I simply correct the name, retest. And there you go, everything works correctly. I didn't need to leave my host project or interrupt my workflow. And of course, it's not just a matter of modifying existing code. You can also add or remove methods and classes, and make significant changes to the components all from within the main project. Now that my component has been corrected, I need to share this correction with my team or my clients. If you use GitHub, it's extremely simple. Just commit the change, then create a new package. For example, here, I'm committing with GitHub Desktop and creating a new tag for this version. Let's take a look at GitHub. I have a script that uses the build for the action project, which launched automatically and is now automatically generating my new release. I'm now going to open another project that uses this component that I've just created. All I have to do is go to the project dependencies interface and check for updates. When I restart, the new package is retrieved and installed automatically. Distribution, therefore, becomes just as smooth as development. In summary, with 4D21, component management becomes simpler, faster, and above all, more integrated. The new project dependencies interface makes it easier to add and update components. The Explorer has been enhanced to allow components to be modified directly from the host project without interrupting the workflow. And integration with GitHub ensures clean and efficient distribution of updates. The end result is more efficient creation, correction, and testing. Team productivity increases, and end user benefits more quickly from a higher quality for the application. Thank you.
So Danny asked, just to confirm, if I modify a component like that, and then I would still need to open the component directly to compile and build for deployment. I think
Yes.
the answer is yes right now.
Currently, yes.
I think stay tuned. As you've seen, these features take a long time and then the features will only get implemented as they're fully ready and fully tested in the application. So through the R releases. So stay tuned. All right, let's keep it going. Let me ask you something. If electronic invoicing became mandatory for your customers next quarter, would your application be ready on day one? Because when regulations change, Your customers don't call their lawyer first, they call you, their developer. And if their invoices are not compliant, they can't bill properly. If they can't bill properly, payments are delayed. Cash flow slows, and suddenly what looked like an administrative topic now becomes a business risk. This is where 4021 LTS changes the conversation. Instead of treating compliance, invoicing compliance, as an external constraint, you build it directly into your application. You create from your, you keep your existing project, you keep your business logic, and you give your customers the same system that they know and love that has updates as the market moves. This means fewer fixes, last-minute fixes, fewer emergency patches, more confidence when regulations evolved. Let's see how this electronic invoicing feature works as it was added into ORDA.
In this demo, we are going to show you how to generate electronic invoices in an existing project while complying with the required regulations. Since many of you already have stable projects that manage electronic invoices, we decided to use one of our own existing projects for this demo. We simply made a few adjustments to it. First, we added this button, which opens a project form containing 4DRiPro. This will display our electronic invoice. Now, let's run the form and see what happens. In this 4DRiPro area, which is empty for now, we will show you step by step how to build your electronic invoice. First, we import an invoice template that we found online. As you can see, just like in any word processing tool, inserting information into a 4DRiPro document is simple and straightforward. Here, I am inserting company information. Then I am inserting formulas. And as you can see, the formulas are automatically calculated as soon as they are added. Now we are going to modify the table. We need to display more information than what is provided in the original template. In fact, we removed some lines because they will be added dynamically later, depending on the number of invoice lines. Here we are adjusting the styles. We also need more details for the totals, so we are adding additional rows in the table for that. At this stage, we are simply refining the layout by adjusting width and borders, just to show that beyond content, you can also make your documents more visually appealing by manipulating it directly. Let's go back to our form. We are going to add code that assigns a data source to our table. In our case, the data source is the invoice lines. Now we run the form again, execute the code we just added, and if we switch to formula mode, you can see the data source has been correctly assigned to the table. Here we are adjusting the number of table headers. Then I am inserting the formulas for each item from our invoice lines data source. And of course, we must not forget to add the formulas for each total. Once everything is calculated, our template is complete. Next, we export this template so that it can be loaded automatically by the form. Going back once again to our form, we remove the temporary button since we are no longer in need of it. In the onload method, we add the code that imports the templates we just created. Now we move on to the final part of our process, which consists of exporting our 4DRiPro document as a PDF A3 electronic invoice. As you probably already know, there is no electronic invoice without XML. So we first need to build the XML in order to attach it to the PDF. Here we are adding the data that will be used to construct the XML, including information about the seller, the buyer, and the invoice lines. We then pass this information to our buildXML method, which returns an XML text. This XML text is then passed to our final export PDF A3 method. We reused the build.xml method from another project available on our GitHub. We simply adjusted it slightly to match our needs and to make it compatible with our structure. It is important to note that this method will vary depending on the Factor X model you choose and according to your own data structure. Now let's look at our export PDFA3 method. As you can see, it is quite simple. We use the WP export documents command with an options object. In this options object, we specify the Factor X version as well as the details of the XML file. For example, we indicate that the XML content is the XML text that we previously generated using the build.xml method. Now, we can see the entire process working from start to finish. Here is our list of invoices. We click on an invoice and the template is loaded. The formulas are automatically calculated at the same time. We click on another invoice and the corrected data is loaded as well. Then we click the export button. Let's find the file that was generated. And here it is, a PDFA3 invoice with the embedded XML. In this example, we used the basic XML invoice model. Just as a reminder, you must ensure that your XML is properly validated. There are many tools available that can validate it and generate detailed error reports if needed. We have now reached the end of our demo. In conclusion, with 4D21 LTS, electronic invoicing goes beyond simply meeting regulatory requirements. It allows you to embed compliance directly into the core of your business applications, enabling you to deliver management solutions that are fully prepared for this now essential requirements.
Very important for specific markets, and 4D provides the, if you need it, you know it's important, and yeah, so very interesting. And we just provide it right out of the box, so very nice. Next, let's take a look at the 4D21 features that directly change how you develop. It boosts productivity, encourages cleaner and better structured code, and reduces errors from the moment you start. With 4D21, many more checks happen in real time in a set of features we call built-in real-time guidance. Issues are flagged now when you write, not at compile time, or in the worst case, at runtime, which was a limitation in 4D21. This means problems are caught easier or earlier when they're faster and cheaper to fix. But it also means you spend less time debugging, more time building, delivering faster, and delivering more reliable applications. Quick demo on all of these features, how they all roll up into one.
The project shown here is intentionally extremely simple. One data class, one list form, one detail form. Each form has its own class. Let's open the list form. In the property list, you can see the form is associated with its class. Here is the class with its properties and function. Immediately, we get several benefits. Auto-completion, that saves time, better code readability, and most importantly, error detection while typing. For example, here, when assigning a data source to a list box, I make a mistake, I validate, and a warning appears. No need to run the application or compile the code anymore to see an error. It appears instantly. Inside the form code, I also benefit from auto-completion with the form command. No more typo. Let's run the project and look at this contact. If I change the type, the display field automatically changes. In real applications, it's common to display different fields depending on an option or a context. Let's look at the code. The form is associated with the contact detail form class. The pop-up calls the create dynamic field function. We duplicate and position the object. The difference is that before, we assign the data source using pointer. Now, with object-set-data-source formula, we directly associate a formula as the data source, which simplifies and clarifies the code. And here comes the real benefit. Inside the onSave function, the code you see is not form-specific. It is standard ORDA code. Previously, dynamic duplications forced us to manipulate pointers. Now, using formulas allows us to write code exactly the same way as everywhere else in the application. The final feature is more subtle, but just as important. It allows you to declare and initialize a variable or property in a single line. This detail may seem trivial, but in a real project, repeated dozens or even hundreds of times, it significantly improves readability and reduces code verbosity. For example, here in this method. That's it for this demo. No visible feature was added to the interface. The goal was to observe the code and how we write it today with 4D21. These are very concrete improvements with a direct impact on the developer's daily work. Less code to write, fewer errors, more comfort, and above all more time to focus on what's matters for your customers. Building useful features, maintaining more stable applications, and reducing bugs.
Okay. Take a quick pause here for any questions that have come up. Someone asked, so I think it was with the electronic invoicing. Is this where all invoicing is eventually going? I think so. This is Dougie said it's an alternative to EDI. There are other models out there. I think this is the European model. That was showed there, but let us know if you need electronic invoicing and we're not providing you the tools. We can definitely figure out how we can get those into the product. It's very important. We want you getting paid, or your end users getting paid, and I'm sure they do too. So there we go. And then last topic, singletons. Singletons can address several use cases. They can be used to centralize services within They can be used within structured utilities like logging, manage workflows, or to control the global states of an application. Today, we'll focus on one specific use case, using a singleton as a data cache manager. This example is intentionally simple, but this architectural impact is real. So let's see how this works in practice real fast.
We'll start with a very simple example, but one that's found in almost all business applications. Here, I have a person table with, of course, the last name, first name, and a field I've called title code. It's a title code, for example, 1, 2, or 3 for Mr., Mrs., or Miss. Historically, in 4D, we could, of course, manage this with enumerations in the toolbox, but it was mainly for interface elements. Today, we're going to use a class instead to centralize these value lists and the associated logic. In my project, I have a class that I've named Cache Manager. Now, HWMH is the name of my application, but it's the Cache Manager class. So it's a shared singleton class, the shared keyword, which means I'll only have one single shared instance of this cache for the application. For the user session, instead of having inter-process variables or loading data in multiple places. A singleton is a type of user class, but a bit special since we'll only have one instance per process, or for all processes in my application if I've used the shared keyword, but we'll also have a single instance for all the server processes. For the titles then, I chose to store in a collection a property of the singleton called titles with my values Mr., Mrs. and Miss. The collection index corresponds directly to the code that we're going to store in the database. This will allow us to lighten the data if I only store integers. Now on the interface side, if I go to my patient list, you see on the left that I'm obviously displaying the title in full for the user. To do this, I actually have a computed attribute in my person entity class called title, which we'll go and look up. In fact, in my title collection, the one that corresponds to the code I've saved in the database. So you see that the computed attribute is actually very, very simple. So this syntax, which is really specific to singletons, I can see right away that I'm calling a singleton since we call it with .me, followed by the member functions or the properties of the class. The advantage of singletons is also that, as you see here, I don't need to instantiate the singleton every time I use it. If I've never used it during my application, the instantiation will happen all by itself, automatically, and so that's why in my singleton I put my list of titles directly here in the constructor in my titles collection. And so the singleton will only be called once, no matter where I use my singleton. I don't need to instantiate it explicitly. From the moment I call it for the first time, if the instance doesn't exist, then the constructor will be called. That's also a very great strength of singletons, and it really changes the game and the way we're going to develop in 4D. To allow the user to choose the patient's title, when I focus on my title input field, I'm going to display my pop-up menu here. And this pop-up menu, if I look in my cache manager, is a member function that lets you display this pop-up menu and return the result chosen by the user. I'm returning here, in fact, the title code chosen by the user, and that's what I'm going to store in the database. Another example. Here, I have a little wizard that will allow me to create a new appointment. And I can choose here the type of consultation requested by the patient, dietetics, physiotherapy, sophrology, and so on. This is a list of values that isn't meant to change every other day, so it's something that I'll be able to put into the cache. In the same way, then, in the same singleton, I'm going to have here a property, a collection of consultation types, except that instead of instantiating it in the constructor, right from the instantiation of my cache manager object, I'll instead use a member function that will allow me to load the cache when I need it. And to load the content of this collection, if the collection isn't defined, I'll call the consultation kind data class, consultation type. The cache load function will allow me to go and fetch the data I need from the server at that moment and load it into a collection. Already pre-sorted, which means that not only will I only load my data when I need it, which will already limit exchanges with the server, but also the loading of data from the database will be done from the server. And I'm only going to retrieve the attributes that I need. If I look at my consultation count table, here you see that I have the name, the description, and possibly a small icon. Now in my case, I only need the primary key and the name. And what's more, I'll be able to sort this collection on the server side and then send it back to my client. So here I'm using a local keyword, but there I'm not using the local keyword. That means that this function will be executed on the server side. I'll stop there within the time allotted to me for this demonstration. So in these two examples, I've deliberately taken very simple cases, a list of titles and a catalog of appointment types, but behind it the idea is always the same. We're replacing interprocess variables that have been deprecated since 4D19R5 with a shared singleton that's dedicated to the cache, so that allows me to both avoid overusing the storage. Most of the time, the first idea that comes to mind when thinking about replacing interprocess variables is to load everything into storage, except that accessing storage has a cost. And what's more, I'll be able to have member functions dedicated to business logic for the data that's in this storage. So I'll be able to centralize both the data and the logic that goes with it. And I'll be able to pave the way, of course, for a more preemptive, more efficient, and more maintainable architecture. Here, it's a simple cache for titles and appointment types. But in a real application, you can apply this exact same pattern to many other reference lists and other business caches. This is how 4D21 lets you modernize shared data management in your applications, with this first use case we've just seen. By replacing deprecated inter-process variables with shared singletons, you prepare your code for preemptive execution. You centralize your business constants, you encapsulate the associated logic, you improve code readability and maintainability. And ultimately, this results in applications that are more scalable and performant for your users.
Eric asks, can a singleton on a server stay single rather than two singletons that exist on the server and each client? Even for a shared singleton, different singletons will exist on the server and each workstation.
So when you
Yeah.
use singleton, I mean, the concept is similar to storage, right? Which is once you create it, it can exist everywhere. Now, singleton, the scope of singleton itself can be differentiated by whether you're using shared singleton or singleton just by itself. Now, singleton itself, you need to instantiate the object, the class object, and then it will exist within that scope of your process and wherever you're using it. Versus shared singleton is almost like we're taking the old concept of using the inter-process variable back. However, you can use the same concept while being able to write your code for preemptive process. And that's kind of the reason why shared singleton is there to help you maintaining that. But I'm not sure if I'm understanding correctly if you think a singleton, once you create it or instantiate one, it will exist in multiple places like different workstation. I don't think it works that way.
Yeah. And the next question is, and I think this was answered in the call, in the demo, if a constructor is called, if a singleton's called, is it automatically instantiated? I think the answer is yes. It gets instantiated in the background, and then it's
Right.
always there for a use in its specific, either locally or shared environment. Chris asked, a little bit off topic, Chris, but he asked, he uses singletons a lot, and he has a specific feature request about singletons. Please put the feature in the feature request. It's in the feature request form. Singleton is an active development, and anything that helps for you, the developer, is appropriate for that environment. So I would recommend doing that. And then Tony asked, accessing storage has a cost. Shared storage.
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
when it's because of it's being shared among, we need to be able to have a way to access that storage from not only from a single thread, but from multiple threads. So that adds a little bit of an overhead into access cost.
Yeah.
So that's why singleton, when you're dealing with singleton in a different context that is not being shared among everything, might be a better way to go in terms of reduce the amount of accessing cost and overhead.
Yeah.
But
And you
again,
may,
it depends, right? Like how much do you use to the point that you actually notice um, the difference in accessing time. You have to do it quite a bit.
yep. And then I think we work on a lot of applications. We get a lot of applications, and people, they want to move to preemptive mode, and then they took all of their inter-process variables and put those into shared storage. And that's not the appropriate approach always. I think that's mainly probably where that's coming from. So don't necessarily assume that you can just, it's going to have the same performance as an interprocess variable would have. So
Yeah.
I think there's some context there that may be missing. But yeah,
Yeah, that's why the share singleton is probably a better approach. Yeah, it just again, it's there to eliminate the use of the old way of doing things, which is using interprocess variable while maintaining your logic and gain the benefit of writing your code for preemptive processing.
Cool. All right, let's keep it going. So, okay, what you saw so far, thank you all for the people that stayed. What you've seen so far is only a fraction of actually what was delivered over the 20 R feature release. Version 21 includes over 100 new features across AI, connectivity, web, security, architecture, developer productivity, etc. And what we showed you, yeah, as I said, is just the highlight or the main themes that the product owners wanted to show and felt that were the most germane to your the developer's needs. So, and each of these additional capabilities represents new room for you to grow your applications, respond to new requirements, and strengthen your commercial positioning. It means more problems, you can solve more problems, you can deliver faster, and there are now more reasons for your customers to continue investing in your solution. So when we talk about 41 LTS, we're not talking about incremental improvement. We're talking about expanding what you can confidently offer to the market in your application. And that's the bigger picture. As mentioned, as alluded to before, there is an upcoming webinar. And the webinar is going to go over and how to build with 4D with AI. So setting up, I'm not sure about the setup phase, but definitely how to vibe code with 4D. Vibe coding, if you're not unaware, is using AI prompts to create applications and not actually more or less open up code editors. So in this upcoming webinar, Matthew will create a full app live using AI to create catalogs, methods, forms, modern UI patterns, and even implement an AI-powered workflow that turns emails into tasks automatically. It's fast, creative, and it shows what modern 4D development can look like when AI becomes part of your development workflow. I think of this webinar as going to be akin to a JPR's database in 15 minutes kind of webinar. Probably a little bit longer, as we always go over on our webinars, but it's going to be really interesting for both newer developers and seasoned professionals, for you to see how AI can help you and go faster. Okay. Also, I'm not sure if you're all aware, but I hope you are. 4D has implemented something called Learn 4D. And that's a dedicated space to help you stay aligned with the evolution of the 4D platform, to adopt best practices faster, and to structure your growth over time. It's multilingual, structured, regularly updated, and built to fit your developer routine. So if you haven't had a look at it already, pop over to learn.4d.com. For partners, you have access to everything, and there's a ton of topics to go over, and we're adding them not constantly, but very regularly. So it's a great way to stay updated on 4D. And as always, before we wrap up, quick reminder, everything you saw today is from the blog. We publish regularly with technical guides, product updates, and practical implementation insights. If you want to go deeper, refine your approach, or stay aligned with 4D best practices, the blog is where the conversation starts, and then join us on the forum where the conversation then can continue. And thank you for attending. Thank you for attending. I really appreciate it. If there's some more questions, we can keep it open for a few minutes, and we can kind of address those if anybody has anything. But very much appreciate your attendance, and look forward to seeing you in a little bit for 21 R2 feature release, not before. Thank you all for attending, and we'll talk soon.